Konsta Helenius is rising some people's draft boards and sinking on others. Why and what is going on with Finnish hockey at the minute? I've got Will Scouch here to talk about all of that on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before you start, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. So feel free to go and hit subscribe over there because if you do, you're going to be entered into a giveaway for some Blue Jackets tickets on the 1st of April. Just email proof that you are subscribed to YouTube to lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com and be in with a chance of winning. So today's episode, we're doing another prospect profile. I've got Will Scouch back, who is very, very smart. And we're talking about Konsta Helenius, who is a name that many people like and many people don't like. And I wanted to know why he was so polarizing and what's going on with Helenius's game. So I'm just going to get into it with Will, because, like I said, he's very smart, much smarter than me, and will say things much better than I can. The thing about doing all of the draft work is that I know just enough to make me dangerous. And so I know I've heard this guy's name a bunch, but I didn't really know anything about him. And he's kind of a guy that I feel like has been creeping up some people's draft boards. Some people are like still pretty solid on him. So I've got Will Scouch of Scouching back, and we're talking about Konsta Helenius today, who we've talked a lot about defensemen in the past little while, so I figured let's talk about a winger. Young Finnish guy, on the smaller side, but Will, what can you tell me about Helenius as a player?
So Helenius, just for the record, he has played center every game I've seen him this year. So this guy has played center all year in Finland, as far as I know. And full disclosure, if you're a Konsta Helenius fan, you can turn this off, but he's lower on my board, I think, than everybody. If you combine all the numbers that everybody has him ranked at together, I think I have him around that number. Like I've seen Konsta Helenius. I've done 5 games of data on him. I've seen him probably another 5 times beyond that, because every single time I see him, I think everyone is nuts or I'm nuts, right? Like it's one or the other. It can't be both or neither. Because as much as I like Helenius, like I think in terms of IQ and reading the ice and timing things, he's one of the better players in the draft. And I think if you are a believer in betting on that and saying, well, he'll get stronger, he'll get quicker, he'll get more skilled, but the brain is there to build around, I can't argue with that, right? Like if you want to put your faith in that, sure, go nuts. I think it's perfectly fair. The thing about Helenius, though, is that this is a trend, I think, with a lot of Finnish players. I think Finland, at least the leagues in Finland, are, I wouldn't say bad, but they're very different. The quality of competition can, within the same lineup, be wildly vast. And, if there's a player who puts themselves in the right spots and forechecks it with good routes and sort of is pressuring guys well, when I watch Helenius, there's once or twice a game where someone on the other team makes a bonehead play when he's on the forecheck, and it's an easy playmaking play there for him. Finland is strange. Just a few years ago, we were dealing with the debate between Joakim Kemell and Brad Lambert. I was on the Brad Lambert train, and he didn't score any points, and Kemell was scoring all the points. And I put my name behind Lambert because he was playing a style of game that wasn't like a lot of the rest of playing in Finland. Whereas Kemell was kind of playing that Finnish style of slower, more tactical, calculated, perimeter volume shooting, style of game. with Helenius, look, the data I've tracked on him is not bad at all. It's not. It's actually very good for a Finnish Pro League player. It's hard to for me, it's hard to project him, I guess, is the thing that's the tripping point for me. It's not that I have him lower on my board because he's not good. It's that I have him lower on my board because I'm not sure in the NHL what he will be outside of a really clever playmaker who goes to the net and knows how to find space around the net. How much do you value that, right? Like, to me, that how much do you value that? A decent puck mover who, in my opinion, hasn't really been tested in a really, really high pace environment, right? Because he doesn't really play with that style of play like a Brad Lambert did in this league. But what he does do is he's a step ahead of his competition a lot of the time. And so I felt with him at the World Juniors when he played, I thought he was fine, right? Like he was making smart passing plays and stitching play together okay, but he wasn't, a lot of these top end guys at that tournament, you don't expect huge things, but they should be really noticeable generally, right? Like Macklin Celebrini, insanely noticeable. And I'm not saying Helenius is there, but I've seen Helenius 2 slots behind Celebrini, right? 3, maybe 4, top 5. And
he is currently the top ranked European skater,
which to me,
Elite Prospects, which
like having seen guys like Ivan Demidov out there doing what he's been doing, having seen who else is on here, even a Igor Chernyshov, right? There's with those players, you can watch them and go, I can see him doing this stuff in the NHL. Whereas with Helenius, it's like, well, if he's doing this stuff in the NHL, I'm not sure it's going to really sort of work all that often because it kind of mixes in with the crowd, if that makes any sense. So to me, it's like, he's smart. You can't fault him for the intelligence he's got. And maybe I am overcorrecting on him. I have him sort of in my 20s range just because I don't know what he is in the NHL. He's an undersized center. He's 5'11-ish. That doesn't really play with a tremendous amount of intensity or pace in his game. He does throw hits, but he's not winning a ton of battles. It's just really tough for me with him. It's a tough evaluation. I think there's a wide range of possibilities with him. But I've also seen a lot of Finnish players in the draft the last 5-10 years who score a lot of points and really struggle to get going in the NHL, right? Capo Kakko is a great example. I'm still not convinced of Joakim Kamel, having seen him in the AHL this year. And I'm trying to think of other examples of high scoring Finnish players from the last 10 years, right? Like you can go to Mikko Rantanen, or you can go to, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm trying to think, but the point is, I think Finland has to be held to a different standard where you got to really see how the player plays and understand what they do, because the jump to the NHL from there, it's a massive jump in speed and physicality. And a guy like Brad Lambert, I felt projected a lot better because of the evasiveness, the skill, the confidence, the ability to carry the puck himself and get through traffic. It was all there. Whereas with Helenius, it's more of a, I'm in the right spot, hit me for a pass, I'll find a guy. Or I'll find a guy, hit them with a pass, go to the net and get a scoring chance, right? Like, which is meat and potatoes hockey. But he's playing good meat and potatoes hockey in Finland, and it's working. But to me, the question is NHL. What is he doing in the NHL? And that's where things get murky with him. And I'm a little bit skittish, quite a lot more than most people, it seems. But, I just remain a bit skittish on him.
In a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Will about Helenius, but first I'm going to tell you about Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. They are the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place, and it's the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, all you need is one powerful hiring partner that can do it all for you. And that's what Indeed is. They partner with you on every step of the hiring process. They've got great time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, virtual interviews, and with Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you're going to get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed makes it super easy to hire great talent. According to Comscore, it is the #1 job site worldwide, and they deliver 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. Offer is valid through March 31st. Once again, that's Indeed.com/locked-on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about Helenius in a second, but so you said something really interesting there. And maybe I'm like way off base here, but I feel like there was a time, and it was maybe 5 or plus years ago now, but I'm sure the Liga used to be one of like the premier hockey leagues outside of the NHL. Like there was the KHL, and then there was the Liga, and then there was kind of every other European league. Is that like, obviously that doesn't seem to be true anymore. Is that just that the quality of players is dropping? Is that like the rise of other leagues in Europe, or is it just kind of these things ebb and flow?
I think it's a combination of everything. I wouldn't say, the thing about Finland, and we see this at the World Juniors a lot, it's they have kind of their own style of play. They like to sort of wear you down and sort of play that short game, right? They kind of play like that ticky-tack style of football, like how Spain used to, where it's like quick passes and just moving the ball in short spurts and just sort of wearing you down that way. And I feel like Finland plays that with like a sort of like at the World Juniors, they had a bit of a heavier, bigger team that sort of grinded the game up and sort of went from there. But yeah, like I think you look at the evidence of the Finnish players that have been drafted in the NHL draft recently, like, Jesperi Kotkaniemi was a pretty productive Liga player, and he's become a good third line NHL center. Capo Caco is still figuring out his role in the NHL. Anton Lundell, at the time of the draft, everybody kind of agreed that he probably is a good third line NHL center projectably, which is fair. But again, like that's not, he's a top 12 pick. People were talking about him really high in the draft. And it just seems like with Finland, their style of play in a lot of cases can translate well to a more dependable and safe NHL player, a guy that can play down your lineup, move the puck well, play the way an NHL coach wants you to play. But there aren't really that many real sort of Finnish difference makers these days outside of like a Miro Heiskanen or maybe Mikko Rantanen would be one, Alex Barkov, but I feel like that's kind of where the list ends. Sebastian Aho, I guess, is on there as well, Rupe Hintz, but
it's been a minute.
But it's been a minute. Those guys are 2015, 2016 draft, not recent. So anyway, I mean, I don't want to, make it seem like Helenius is a bad hockey player. It is more just about, again, zooming out, looking at the whole landscape and going, where is he going to be in the NHL? Like, what is his role going to be? Because, personally, I'm more drawn to players that, do things that I can see now would be putting, you can see what they do in the NHL, right? Ivan Demidov, he'll have issues, I think, in the NHL. There will be some struggles, but if things go right for him, he could be a superstar just with the creativity and the skill and the just relentless offensive motion and just relentless offensive creativity. I don't really see that with a guy like Helenius. It's just a much more stable and refined game that could work. If I can't say he won't be a player, but just what kind of player is going to be interesting to see, because based on what I've seen out of Finland the last few years, he doesn't wow me as much as the most fun Finnish player I've seen in the last few years, and that was Brad Lambert, right? Like, it's just, to me, it's just not quite there, even though he's scoring a lot more.
So is that kind of where you have his ceiling at? Is kind of a very solid third line guy who maybe jumps up to the second line, or do you see kind of a little bit more potential in Helenius?
Well, it depends. It depends on the. It depends on. It's really hard when I get asked questions like, "What line do you see a player playing on?" Because it's so much of NHL hockey is about
And it's different
structure
with every
and like who
team
you pair with whom, right? So to me, it's like, would I see him as a line driver in the NHL, right? Like I'm in the NHL draft really high for me personally. I always look for guys that I think could drive a line, right? In the defensive end, they win the puck back, they get it out of their end, they get it in the offensive end. We were talking about Berkeley Catton. He's really good at that. Macklin Celebrini, also great at it. Helenius is a lot more of a, not passive, but I'd say complementary in a good way. Like you look at what Juraj Slafkovsky is doing, right? Another player drafted out of Finland who I think has settled into an NHL role really well, where he isn't the guy, right? Like Nick Suzuki's having a great year. Cole Caulfield is finally regressing, but Slafkovsky's job is forecheck well with that reach, and he's a pretty quick guy now. If you get the puck, make a skill move, make some space, and find Caulfield or Suzuki, right? If you're in the offensive zone, go to the net, find some space around the net, let the other guys get the puck to you and put it home, right? That's his job. And he's sort of settled into that. So with Helenius, I think he could be a similarly complementary player where his role is focused but more limited, which is fine. But in my world, I set that as a lower priority than something more like a guy who dictates the game when they're on the ice, right? Rather than just playing really well within a structure. And, Finnish players, I feel like, do play often really well within an NHL structure. It works, but it's a matter of how far do you want to move the needle and how far do you want to really push your luck, I guess, in terms of that fun factor, that creativity, that offensive ability, and that ability to cross up NHL defensemen rather than just sort of tactically beat them. It's a nitpicky thing, but I could see the wide range of opinions in the NHL from the NHL people I speak to. A lot of them are higher on him than I am, but some of them have also said to me like, yeah, like I kind of see where you're coming from. And like, yeah, I feel like the World Juniors was a little bit of a look into some of the limitations that come from his style of game and how things need to maybe adjust a little bit for him over time. Again, like Parekh, like we were talking about, can I say it's impossible? Absolutely not, right? The right team, taking enough time with him, sure, I could see him being a useful NHL player. It's just a matter of, for me, there are guys that have kind of just bumped him down over the year.
Going to get back to my conversation with Will in a minute, but first I've got to tell you about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 31st, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match, and there's no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SPIC, is a registered broker-dealer. I've also got to tell you about Factor because I don't know about you, but I am kind of a gremlin person. I eat a lot of freezer dumplings and instant ramen and cereal, and I don't have to do that anymore because now I have Factor. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. They have over 35 different options to choose from. They've got calorie-smart options, protein plus, keto, and there's more than 60 add-ons for snacks and desserts to help you fueled up and feeling good all day long. It is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. It's less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. LOCKEDONNHL50 to get 50% off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50. Yeah. So obviously the Blue Jackets probably not going to be in that range for Helenius. He's currently ranked, I think, 8th by the consolidated ranking over on Elite Prospects. Bob McKenzie has him again at 8th. He's anywhere from 4th through to 13th. I don't think he'll go 4th. That seems way too high. But is there a world in which he maybe drops to the Blue Jackets don't have a second first round pick at the minute, but is there a world in which he kind of drops to maybe that 16 to 24 range and maybe gets picked up by the Blue Jackets, or do you think he probably goes?
I think he goes relatively early because there are teams out there that really value guys that can think, really value players that can just make really good plays and just play the game the way that they're looking for it to be played, right? He goes to the net, fine, can he make a pass? Can he get to the net? Can he whatever, blah, blah, blah? Yes, sure. We can get him to do all those things and do it pretty well. And I think teams will value that, especially past a certain point in this draft, especially where there's a lot of uncertainty about a lot of guys. So I think he does get drafted before the 20s, I would say. I do think, I feel like he'll also have a very good and productive under 18 if he goes to that tournament. If he's there, I feel like he'll score a lot in front of NHL scouts, and I feel like that will also factor into him being drafted pretty high. But, for me, I just can't sort of shake the feeling that I'm expecting that, but I don't really care because I've seen other areas, other more difficult competition for him, and it's sort of caused issues in ways that you can't really identify when it's like watching Dalibor Dvorsky rip apart the under-18s last year as the biggest kid with one of the better shots in the tournament. It's like, well, yeah, you expect him to, if he didn't have a great tournament, you'd be a little concerned, but that doesn't automatically mean that, having him later in the first round means that you're wrong. It's just a matter of he kind of does what you expect and the limitations are still there. So I feel like he'll get drafted pretty early. I don't know about top 5. I don't know about top 10, maybe, but yeah, I would be very surprised if he slipped really far in the draft based on the IQ level he's got and how teams might just like the guy that can play a little bit more of a precise, surgical, structural game.
Let's finish up. We are a Blue Jackets podcast. So I want to just kind of get your kind of like a vibe check, I guess, on how the Blue Jackets draft picks from the most recent draft are kind of ticking along. Obviously, Fantilli has been, I would say, a success until he got broken and is now out until the end of the month because we can't have any nice things ever, apparently. But how do you see, kind of, obviously, it's tough to look at a draft not even a year on and be like, this was a success. But looking at the players that they drafted in 2023, are they trending in the right direction? Is there anyone that you think is kind of taken a big jump?
Honestly, yeah. I think almost everybody you drafted last year, except for the guy that went in the 7th round, I think everybody is having a great year. I think Will Whitelaw is a guy who I always really, really liked, but I knew he was going to be a bit of a slow burn in college. Wisconsin is a team that's going through a lot of changes and all kinds of stuff, but whenever I've caught him, I think he's looked pretty good. I love Luca Pinelli. He's on pace for something like 50 goals this year.
Yeah, we love Luca on the show.
Luca Pinelli rules. A guy who, I think was a no-brainer for Columbus. Andrew Strathman, you might look at him and say, well, he's not even a point a game in the USHL as a defenseman. But whenever I watch Youngstown, he always was going to be an adventure. And again, like we talked about Zane Parekh earlier, you've got a Strathman, you've got a Matejchuk, you've got a lot of those type of offensive guys.
Yeah.
And I find with Strathman, there's a little bit more mobility, and I feel like he's really sort of learning a little bit better about how to pick his spots and not push so much offensively and be so confident in a good way, not like he's losing confidence, but you know what I mean. I'm on the record about being a huge Gavin Brindley fan. He's having another really, really good year. They took Fantilli away from him, and he's still,
and he got better,
he's gotten better. He was an excellent part of the U.S. team at the World Juniors. And yeah, like you said, Adam Fantilli, every time I watch Columbus, you would think guys like Gaudreau and Laine and all those guys would be the guys who are always catching your eye. But for me, a lot of times it's Fantilli.
Yep.
And so that's the guy who, I thought getting him at 3, I've really liked Leo Carlsson's game this year, but I think Columbus should be more than happy with the fact that they get a guy like Fantilli, especially to play up the middle on that team, because Columbus, I think, is one of the teams that desperately needs guys up the middle a little bit relative to the rest of them.
Centers, yeah.
Yes, it's a bit of a concern, I think. But yeah, I think they had one of the better drafts last year, especially considering where they were picking. Mm-hmm. And they came away with 4 of some of my just personal favorite players last year, and one in Strathman who I wanted to love, and I think he's so much fun. But I remember thinking before the draft, I'm like, God bless whoever drafts Andrew Strathman. Like, so he's so fun and so unhinged, but like, it's, who cares, right? Like, if it's the right pick, who cares? And right. I feel like he's come along pretty well.
Sometimes you've got to draft an adventure.
Yes.
And I know that we've talked a little bit before about how goalie drafting is basically impossible because a lot of goalies are just voodoo. How's Sergei Ivanov looking?
Guy rules. Russian, if all else fails in the draft, forget about what anyone is saying about the goaltenders that are available and just look at Russia and just do a little bit of homework. And I don't know what they're feeding their goaltenders over there. I don't know what they're doing, but Russian goaltending is in a bit of not a golden age, but there's a lot of really good ones coming out of Russia, and Ivanov is one of them. I've been watching him for a few years, and I feel like he's looked great every time I've seen him. I've gone out of my way this year to look a lot more at goaltending and study it a lot more. And whenever I watch Ivanov in the KHL, when I watched him last year, I'm going, yeah, I could see this guy being at least a really good bet. Maybe not a sure thing, because goalies are never a sure thing, but he's at least athletic and technical enough and smart enough from what I could tell, to make it work. And he's faced a huge amount of shots in the KHL this year and turned away a lot of them. So having a great year, good for him. And again, yeah, like, it just adds to what could be a great draft class for Columbus. And again, last thing I'll say, if I compile all of the players that every team has drafted and look at each team individually, Columbus has probably got the best sort of looking pool out of all of them. And that includes Fantilli. So it's not a bad start for whoever's taking over for Jarmo Kekalainen. And I imagine there's more coming for Columbus, but I think they've done a really, really good job.
If people want more prospect news, more kind of scouting insights, if they want to hear more about how much you love Gavin Brindley and Luca Pinelli, where can people find you and your work online?
So you can find me obviously at scouching.ca. We have subscriptions where you can view data tools that we put together for the NHL draft, as well as the NHL itself. We've also got a really fun Discord server that's in there as well that you can participate in. We play board games in there. We share video. We yell at each other about various hockey players. It's a good time. You can also follow my work, obviously, on Twitter, or x.com, I should say. My apologies. But we
can call it Twitter here.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm scouching there as well. And you can also find my work at Puck Preps, where I do some writing for the 2006 age group, or the draft eligible sort of age group of the year. So I'm over there working with Sam McGilligan, putting together, reports on NCAA guys. So those are the main areas. We also do live shows on YouTube Monday nights at 8 p.m. and Thursdays at 2 p.m. So you can come in and ask some questions and hear some fun takes, and we'll see you there.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming to hang out and talk prospects with me.
Anytime. It's a joy.
And that's all I've got for you today. Tomorrow we are going to break down tonight's game against the Edmonton Oilers, and hopefully we don't have to relive another Connor McDavid highlight reel goal, but I'm not holding out hope, if I'm being honest. But we'll talk about all of that tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen today every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and on SiriusXM. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. Find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. You can comment, question, criticism, if you have any of those, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.